After The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom released for the Nintendo Switch in May of 2023, I was confident we would have to wait until Nintendo's next system for the next brand new Zelda game. Now, I was of course expecting some Zelda release in 2024, but I was expecting a remaster or a re-release or something other than a new fucking game. The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom came out of nowhere and shocked everyone in the June 2024 Nintendo Direct. A new 2D Zelda where you play as the titular princess, releasing in a matter of months, and just 3 months after reveal, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom came out to pretty good critical reception from fans and critics alike.
This was instantly seen as one of the better Zeldas, with many lauding it as one of, if not the best 2D entry in the series. Can you tell I have something to say about that?
I picked up this game at launch as any Zelda fan does, and over the next week and a half I journeyed through this brand new quest through Hyrule and had a ton of fun. This is a great game with really fun gameplay mechanics, a solid story, and a bunch of smaller issues that bothered the hell out of me.
I had fun with this game, and overall it's been such a positive experience that my issues with this game stick out so much more. Echoes of Wisdom has issues, and as much as I'd love to praise this game for everything it does right, more than anything, I really feel like I need to get its issues off my chest.
Now, please keep in mind, I love this game. It's good, but it has a ton of issues that I feel need to be refined before we get our next 2D Zelda, so I want to talk about these issues now. Oh, also spoilers for the entire game, oops. The core mechanic, going as far to be a part of the title, are the echoes. Throughout the world, you come across all these pieces of furniture, or enemies, or whatever that you can copy and place on anywhere for the cost of triangles from Try. This system works really well. Each thing has a number of triangles associated with it, so you can't just place an infinite amount of things. You can use multiple tries for one single strong enemy, or spawn a bunch of smaller enemies. If you're trying to build some platforming things, you need to make sure you don't go over your limit. It's a well-made, balanced system. And it also has a bunch of flaws, starting with this menu. Does this remind you of anything? This is very reminiscent of the Arrow Fuse menu from Tears of the Kingdom. This menu was already egregious and hated, but as annoying as it was, I was able to at least accept it as a first attempt at making a menu like this. Hell, it's just like the quick select menus all the weapons used, which all worked perfectly. There was just too much here for it to be as intuitive, but I could shrug it off thinking, hey, if a future Zelda game had a menu as long as this again, they'd probably do something better with it. And here we are. Alright, time to give this menu the rip it deserves. Why? Having everything in one row is abysmal. It's an absolute chore navigating this menu and trying to find what you need. And the built-in sort features don't help all too much. Last used, most used, last learned by type. In theory this would help, but in practice, only maybe once or twice did this really feel like it helped. So how could this get fixed? Like this? Lay out everything in multiple rows. It'd be way quicker to navigate and see what you're looking for. Plus, it also incentivized me to try different kinds of echoes. With this menu being like this, I would never see any echo I'd barely use, and because of that, I forgot they existed. By having them hide somewhere along this line, I never saw them and never thought to try and use them. And by having the menu like this, I feel like it would have helped greatly to see a much wider variety of echoes you can use. Another feature I would have appreciated would be a favorite feature of sorts. Say I can tag some echoes that always appear at the top of the list. My go-tos, my strongest enemies, most useful pieces of furniture, my go-to enemies to tackle each element. Just having some quickly accessible would have greatly sped up the process of selecting echoes. Also, there are some echoes that are just completely worthless. These statues found in the Gerudo Desert dungeon, you only need 2, but you'll want to learn all 4 of them, and they only have a use within this dungeon, so once you beat this dungeon, they just clog up your roster. Another annoying thing was leveled up echoes that make lower powered echoes useless. Now this system does work in some instances. You first learn a level 1 echo, then later you may learn the level 2 version of that echo, a more powerful version. So that's fine and dandy, except look at that, another pointless echo clogging up this menu, thank you. And then there's the rolling Karamodillo. Some context, after you beat the first dungeon in the Southern region, you're given a choice of where to go next, the Gerudo Desert or the Jabu Waters. Now, I went to the Gerudo Desert first, and there I found the rolling Karamodillo level 2, which went on to be one of my most used echoes. It's fast and does a solid amount of damage damage, so I found myself falling back on this guy very frequently for a bit. But then after I beat the Gerudo Desert area, I headed up to Jabo Waters, and you know what I ran into on the way up there? The Rolling Caramadillo level 1. So right then and there, that echo was completely irrelevant. And it's not like I did anything out of order. I mean, these quests were presented in a non-linear order. I could go to the Gerudo Desert first, so I did. And considering that there's only 2 places you can go, and one of them is a lot closer to the first dungeon than the other, I don't think it's far-fetched that others went to the Gerudo Desert and found the level 2 Rolling Caramadillo first. So how could this be fixed? Remove the level 1 from this area. It would make no difference to not have him here. Instead, put the level 1 in Gerudo Desert, then take the level 2 and add him up to the climb to Death Mountain. Yes, this still makes it possible to get the level 2 before you get the level 1, but it makes it to where you'd have to go out of your way to do that. It wouldn't be able to happen if you just play the game the way it's telling you to.
While I found there to be a lot of annoying flaws with the Echo system, at the end of the day, I still think it's a great system. It could have used some work, but overall, I like it. Which I can't really say about my next topic of discussion.
Oh, this was so lame. When I first saw this in a gameplay trailer, I was disappointed to say the least. One of the most intriguing things about this game was that to attack, you had to rely solely on your echoes. I was excited to see how the developers would work around the lack of a sword, since now, you can't just make enemy encounters as simple as hit it with your sword. Sword Fighter form, this is cheap. After defeating what seems to be Link in the first dungeon, you get a sword which when you equip, it activates your Sword Fighter form, which allows you to play as Link as long as you have energy. Now like Echoes, the balancing of this system is good. I mean, you can't just use this all the time, you have to use it sparingly. Defeating special types of enemies would get you some energy back, and usually you can also gather some from boss fights, potions, and smoothies. It's a well-balanced system, but it doesn't change the fact that it just feels cheap. As I said, I was looking forward to see how the developers would think outside the box and make a Zelda game where you can't just swing your sword. And as a player, it would have been so cool to have to think strategically for every encounter, since you can't just attack everything with a sword. Notice how I said it would be cool? Sword Fighter form is cheap, and I feel like a scumbag for falling back on it so often. It feels like rewinding when playing an emulated game. It feels like it's cheating. It's so lame, but oh my god, I don't have the patience for this, so there. I'm not happy with myself. I wish I was forced to not use it for every encounter, but it's right there. I don't want to deal with this. Fine, no dinner for me tonight. Also, boss fights completely fell back on this form. Now, usually they do a good job of having you use your echoes to stun each boss, but to quickly dispose of them, you basically have to use this form. You can use your echoes, but weaker echoes do so little damage it takes too long, and stronger echoes are so slow it takes too long. So fine, I'll use the Sword Fighter form again. I did get my wish towards the end of the game. You free Link and give him his sword back, then go through this little gauntlet with a bunch of enemy encounters, and you don't have Link's sword, so you're entirely dependent on your echoes. And this is coincidentally one of the most fun parts of the game. Even the final boss, you fight with no sword, which made me very happy. I was scared right before Link would be knocked out and you'd have to pick up his sword again, but no, he fights alongside you and you just have to focus on keeping echoes in the field. It's a really fun part of the game, but unfortunately, most of the game gives you the ability to use Sword Fighter form, which just feels lame.
In all fairness, there's no world where I would have liked Sword Fighter form. But even then, at least there's a couple good things I could say about it, but at the end of the day, it still comes across as cheap and lazy to me. But wait a minute, let's back up a bit. There's no... Guess what I'm whining about next.
Now, the world of Hyrule, what can I complain about? Oh, maybe it's at the center of the map is the same as a Link to the Past map? No, that's awesome. But it also does lead to some weird contradictions. In A Link to the Past, this mountain range up here is Death Mountain, but here, Death Mountain is instead to the left of the Lost Woods, and this mountain range is renamed Lanayru. That's cute because it's like Lanayru from Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword, but it's also just really weird because this was either once Death Mountain, or it will one day be Death Mountain, depending on this game's place in the timeline. Anyways, past that, the world is kind of boring to explore. The most fun thing is finding each echo for the first time, but there's only 127, meaning you're not gonna find a whole lot just roaming the world. But hey, it's a Zelda game, which means there are all sorts of secrets to find. There are all sorts of caves and hidden rooms with little puzzles and challenges, which are a ton of fun, and the rewards end up being is super fucking lame. It's a rarity if you find a piece of heart. Most of the time you're finding fruit for smoothies or might crystals, which can be used to upgrade Link's sword. Now the might crystals may sound useful, and I mean they are, but you always find a bunch in dungeons, and you get a bunch when you beat bosses, so it never feels exciting to find any. It just feels like, oh boy, more of these, I guess I gotta go upgrade Link's sword sometime. But hey, at least there's actual side quests. These are cool, like this one. I have to find which guard in Hyrule Castletown is an imposter, and my reward for completion is... fucking hell. Well, maybe this one will get me. Son of a bitch. The only cool side quest I did was at the Eastern Palace, which has a mini dungeon inside complete with a boss fight. It's short, but hey, it's still cool. I got a piece of heart from the boss and a special accessory from the quest giver, so that was at least worth my time. Also, finding the runaway horse at Hyrule Ranch lets you take out a horse, so that's definitely worth doing. But overall, the few side quests I did gave me nothing but smoothie ingredients, which is just so lame. You get so many from everything else, it just feels worthless and not exciting at all. Exploration here is so disappointing. I don't feel like I get anything from exploring this world. In A Link to the Past, there were all of these bonus items that you could get from just exploring. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, I mean, these games really felt like they rewarded your exploration. But this? I hope a golden egg is worth your troubles. I can get this from a damn amiibo scan. Another thing I hated about the world were the villages. Breath of the Wild had so many towns, each of a great size, and they felt alive with people walking around, living life, and seeing glimpses of these towns here got me so excited. The villages in Echoes of Wisdom are atrocious. They're all too small, usually having like 4 houses. Gerudo Town is bigger, but it also just feels empty. Goron City is absolutely puny. The Deku Village doesn't even feel like a village. And then Kakariko Village, oh my god, what is this? This is fucking pathetic. This isn't Kakariko Village. This is a fucking joke. An insult to every Kakariko that preceded it. This makes Kakariko Village and Twilight Princess look like A Link to the Past Kakariko Village. Look at this. Notice how there's people about? Notice how it's a sizable town? Now look at this. It's small, pathetic, and everyone just stands there doing nothing. This just feels sad and pathetic, and I just don't like thinking about it. Let's just move on. Alright, this one will be quick compared to the others. Dungeons. It was nice having traditional puzzle dungeons back, although they weren't without their issues. First off, there aren't enough. Including Hyrule Castle, there's only 7. Some like to count this last section before the final boss, but this isn't a dungeon. It's just not. 7 is a weak amount for a modern day 2D Zelda. Excluding the sewers, Hyrule Castle, and Ganon's Tower, A Link to the Past had 10 in 1991, so I find 7 for a modern Zelda hard to stomach. I mean, Link's Awakening and both Oracle games had more. Also, these dungeons were usually missing mini bosses. Some of them had actual mini bosses, and they were awesome. A few just had Link, which fine, but also not crazy exciting. And then others had none, which made them feel pretty damn lame. Also, the bosses were pretty hit or miss for me. Some were definitely cool, but others just reused pre-existing bosses with maybe something different about them this time. But even then, the different thing was usually just, you're fighting them in 2D now, which honestly doesn't change a whole lot. This is a bit more broad, but there's a bunch of things that fell under this umbrella. This game could be excruciatingly slow sometimes. A big thing was the amount of dialogue. Oh my god. For a 2D Zelda, this is so much. And so much of it is just nothing but fluff. Characters not understanding the simplest things and just saying nothing of value while doing so. So many instances, they just go on and on about nothing, and it feels like such a waste of time. Like, shut up.
And you know that when I, a professional chatterbox who's been whining about this garbage for over a day at this point, tells you that you're talking too much, you know you've gone too far.
And this problem also extends to buying things. Before many boss fights, I found myself stocking up on potions, but oh my god, buying them was tedious. You can only buy them one at a time, but you can carry a lot, and if you're buying in bulk, you just have to sit there and repeatedly press A for a couple of minutes, and it's so slow and tedious. Do you remember how Breath of the Wild introduced this? where did that go? In a similar vein, there's also smoothies, which were hyped up to be a big thing. Throughout the world, you can find this Deku Scrib who will help you make smoothies with the ingredients you found around the world. Now, like many other things, I like the system conceptually. Each ingredient will give you different effects, and combining ingredients can double up effects or give you more effects. On paper, it's a cool idea, but first, making them takes too long. You have to pick your 2 ingredients at a time, wait for them to mix just for, oh, look at that, I made a fucked up one. Alright, let's try this again, and oh, I fucked it up again. I tried to experiment with making smoothies, but so many ended up just being bad, which felt so unrewarding. It's also so tedious compared to cooking in Breath of the Wild. Remember how that went? I miss this. Last bit of tedium I want to talk about are the 2D sections. Now, Link's Awakening wasn't free from these, but oh my god, they were way less freaking than they were here. 2D sections are so common here, and I hate them. Being able to only move left or right in a Zelda game is so annoying, and they're just so common here. I found myself sighing so hard when I got to another one of these. I mean, there are just way too many, but like, they're so common, why?
Can I seemingly contradict everything I've said in the past 15 minutes and say I love this game?
I love Echoes of Wisdom. It's undoubtedly my game of the year. The new things it did were great. I love the spin this game gave to the traditional Zelda formula, and these issues didn't ruin the game for me. It was just consistent annoyances. So why did I focus on talking about what I didn't like about the game before I even talked about what I did like about it? Well, whenever I would inevitably talk about this game, I would have talked about my issues there, and it would have been a very polarizing review, and less fun to talk about. Now that I've taken time to get off my chest what I didn't like about this game, anytime I do talk about it in the future, I can be as positive as I want, and I won't feel the need to bring up my issues with this game because I've already talked about them here. I also just really felt like I really needed to get these issues out and talk about and criticize the lesser aspects because I want to see more 2D Zelda. I want to see it continue to innovate, but more importantly, be the best it can be. Now, will the staff over at Grezzo see this and write down a checklist of everything I said to make sure they do better next time?
No, but the First Amendment gave me, as an American, the right to complain about whatever I want with no consequences, and since I have the right to do so, you bet your ass I will. And if I don't, the Founding Fathers would have died for nothing. And since I spent the last 15 minutes practicing my First Amendment rights, I should now practice my Second Amendment rights. God, I love being an American.